You've heard of V12s, turbocharged monsters, and big blocks that shake the ground. But these engines throw logic out the window. We're talking triangle-shaped diesels, turbine-powered motorcycles, and piston counts that defy basic math. Some of them broke records, others just broke the rules. These are the 13 mad engines you might not know about, because normal is boring, and these machines are anything but. Honda Oval Piston V4. In the world of motorsport, nobody bends the rules quite like Honda, and in the late 1970s, they went all in on a power plant that was part genius, part loophole, and all madness. This was the Honda NR series, a 4-stroke V4 engine designed to behave like a V8, the magic oval pistons. The original idea came from Honda's determination to beat the dominant 2-stroke motorcycles in Grand Prix racing, while still using a 4-stroke engine. The racing rules allowed up to 4 cylinders, but they said nothing about piston shape, so Honda engineered pistons that were essentially rectangles with rounded corners. Each oval piston had 8 valves, 4 intake and 4 exhaust, and used 2 connecting rods. Multiply that across 4 cylinders, and you are looking at a 28-valve 4 that breathed like a V8. The displacement started at 748 cubic centimeters in the NR500 and later reached 747 cubic centimeters in the NR750 street version. Power output was around 125 horsepower at over 14,000 revolutions per minute. The engine case was made of magnesium, the exhausts were titanium, the fairings were carbon fiber. It was a mechanical symphony of over-engineering and raw ambition that very few manufacturers would even dare to attempt. But despite the wild design, the bike struggled in racing. It was too complex, too delicate, and too far ahead of its time. Still, it remains a legend, a flex from Honda that proved 4-stroke engines could still break the rules and sound like a banshee doing it. And just when you thought pistons couldn't get weirder, the next engine has 12 of them. Inside, only 6 cylinders. You think that is over-engineered? Wait until you hear about an engine that literally has no cylinder head. Junker's Jumo 205. This is not a typo. This engine has 6 cylinders and 12 pistons. Built by German aircraft manufacturer Junkers in the 1930s, the Jumo 205 was one of the most radical diesel engines ever created. It was an opposed piston, 2-stroke diesel with twin crankshafts, one at the top and one at the bottom. Instead of a cylinder head, each cylinder housed 2 pistons that moved toward each other during combustion. Each cylinder had a bore of 105 millimeters and a stroke of 175 millimeters per piston. That meant a total displacement of 16.6 liters. The 2 crankshafts were geared together and spun in opposite directions, resulting in a perfectly balanced rotational system. Air entered from the center of the cylinder and exhaust exited at the ends, allowing for incredible thermal efficiency and reduced mechanical complexity. If you ignore the whole double crankshaft situation, the Jumo 205 produced between 600 and 700 horsepower at around 2,200 revolutions per minute. It ran on diesel fuel and was primarily used in aircraft like the Junkers Ju-86 high-altitude reconnaissance planes during the early years of World War II. But its influence did not end with the war. The Jumo's opposed piston design inspired generations of engineers who later adapted the concept into submarine engines, marine diesels, and even some modern-day military applications. From torpedo boats to stealthy undersea drones, the legacy of the Jumo still echoes in military tech today. And speaking of unhinged designs, what happens when you stack 2 flat engines and crank them together into one monstrous machine? From diesel aviation to turbine insanity, this next engine did not roar. It screamed like a fighter jet. MT-TY2K turbine motorcycle. There are fast motorcycles. Then there's the MT-TY2K, a street-legal monster powered not by pistons, but by a jet engine. Specifically, it uses a Rolls-Royce Allison Model 250C20 turboshaft engine, originally designed for helicopters. This engine produces 320 horsepower and delivers an astounding 425 pound-feet of torque. And yes, it runs on jet fuel or diesel. Weighing around 500 pounds dry, the Y2K Superbike is capable of reaching speeds in excess of 200 miles per hour. The engine spins at over 52,000 revolutions per minute at idle and howls like an F-16 fighter jet when you twist the throttle. The rear tire has to be custom built just to handle the sheer force of the turbine's output. It also has no transmission in the traditional sense. Power is transferred through a 2-speed automatic gearbox with a final chain drive. Built by Marine Turbine Technologies in the early 2000s, the bike was never meant for mass production. Fewer than 15 units were reportedly built, and each one had to be custom fitted for its owner. The bike comes with a heat warning label and a disclaimer that sitting too close to the exhaust could melt nearby vehicles. It is the ultimate example of a machine made purely for spectacle. What sets the MTT Y2K apart is not just its power, it's the sheer absurdity of putting a gas turbine engine meant for a helicopter into a motorcycle. It's loud, terrifying, and mechanically unreasonable. But for those who crave mechanical madness, it's perfection on two wheels. We did the digging so you could just enjoy the ride. If you made it this far, show some love, drop a like, and hit subscribe. Now let's shift gears to something even more complicated, with not one, but two crankshafts. BRM H16 Formula 1 engine. In the mid-1960s, Formula 1 engineers were pushing the limits of what a racing engine could be, but British Racing Motors took that challenge and ran headfirst into mechanical madness. Their creation, the BRM H16, a racing engine with 16 cylinders, 2 crankshafts, and enough complexity to make even seasoned mechanics weep. This engine was essentially two flat 8 engines stacked on top of each other, forming a unique H-shaped configuration. Each bank had its own crankshaft, and the two were geared together to drive a common output shaft. The final displacement was just over 3 liters, placing it within Formula 1 regulations at the time. In terms of raw numbers, the H16 produced over 400 horsepower at 10,000 revolutions per minute, which was impressive for its era. However, the BRM H16 was infamously unreliable. Its excessive weight, high center of gravity, and sheer number of moving parts led to constant failures. It ran hot, shook violently, and was a nightmare to maintain. Only one car ever won a Formula 1 race using this engine, the Lotus 43, driven by Jim Clark at the United States Grand Prix in 1966. Despite its brief moment of glory, the engine's reputation was largely negative. Engineers struggled to get the power to the ground effectively, and even when it worked, the handling balance of the car was compromised by the engine's layout. It was a prime example of what happens when complexity outruns practicality. Still, the BRM H16 remains a fascinating chapter in racing history, a reminder that innovation and insanity often walk hand in hand. If you thought that was impractical, how about an engine designed for a truck but big enough to power a tank? Tatra 15.8-liter V10 Diesel. This is not your average truck engine. Designed in the heart of Eastern Europe, the Tatra 15.8-liter V10 Diesel was built for one purpose: brute force. Produced by the legendary Czech manufacturer Tatra, this monstrous engine powered heavy military vehicles, missile carriers, and off-road artillery haulers that needed to conquer the harshest terrains with complete reliability. With a displacement of 15.8 liters and a 10-cylinder V-shaped layout, the engine generated immense low-end torque, crucial for pulling massive loads across battlefields, frozen tundra, or muddy supply routes. It operated on diesel fuel and used air cooling technology, a Tatra trademark that eliminated the need for complex radiators or liquid cooling systems. That made it more durable in remote environments where maintenance options were limited or non-existent. Although exact horsepower figures vary depending on the model, many versions of the Tatra V10 Diesel produced over 450 horsepower and a staggering 1,200 pound-feet of torque. It redlined at low revolutions per minute, but that's exactly what made it perfect for industrial-grade military machines. Unlike high-revving sports cars, this engine did not scream. It rumbled, slow and unstoppable like a rolling fortress. Physically, the engine was massive, measuring over 5 feet in length and weighing nearly 1,500 pounds. It was mounted in vehicles like the Tatra T813 or T815 Colos, both known for their 12-wheel drive systems and extreme off-road capabilities. This was the kind of power plant you use when nothing else would survive the mission. It may not win any beauty contests, but it will haul a tank through a swamp without breaking a sweat. From heavy and slow to light and completely unhinged, meet the motorcycle engine that thought it was a Ferrari. Honda CBX Inline 6. In the late 1970s, Honda decided to do something no one asked for, but everyone remembers. They created a motorcycle engine so audacious it stunned the industry. Enter the Honda CBX Inline 6, a 1,047 cubic centimeter 6-cylinder masterpiece that brought Formula 1 sound to the streets, wrapped in Japanese engineering precision. At a time when most motorcycles ran on singles or twins, and maybe a triple if you were lucky, Honda said, "Let's go big." big. The result was an engine that stretched the width of the bike itself, with dual overhead camshafts, 24 valves, and a redline over 9,000 revolutions per minute. The CBX was smooth, powerful, and absurdly high-tech for its era. It produced 105 horsepower and 63 pound-feet of torque, figures that made it one of the fastest production bikes of its time. But the real story wasn't just the numbers. It was the sound. The CBX howled. It sang at high revolutions per minute, like a miniature Ferrari, with a mechanical symphony that sent chills down riders' spines. And because it was so smooth, it felt effortless at speed, even with the added bulk of its engine. Despite its brilliance, the CBX was short-lived. The wide engine made cornering awkward, and maintenance was complex due to the tightly packed cylinder arrangement. Still, it became an icon, a statement that Honda could build the most sophisticated engine in motorcycling if they wanted to, and they did. Today, the CBX is a collector's dream and a mechanical monument to the days when motorcycle manufacturers chased glory, not just sales. Speaking of overkill, what if your V8 was the size of a small country? Chevrolet 572 Big Block. This is not a high-revving European marvel. This is Detroit's definition of excess. The Chevrolet 572 cubic inch Big Block, equal to 9.4 liters, is one of the largest, loudest, and most over-the-top crate engines ever built for the street. Originally developed as a performance upgrade for muscle cars and drag racers, this V8 engine is the spiritual successor to the fire-breathing monsters of the 1960s and 70s, and it does not disappoint. In its ZZ572/620 form, this naturally aspirated beast produces 620 horsepower at 5,500 revolutions per minute and 650 pound-feet of torque at 4,500 revolutions per minute. It comes with forged aluminum pistons, a forged steel crankshaft, hydraulic roller cam shaft, and rectangular port aluminum cylinder heads. This thing is built to survive abuse. Weighing in at over 670 pounds, this iron block brute is not concerned with efficiency. It guzzles premium fuel like it is going out of style. But if you are building a Pro Street Camaro, a Nova Sleeper, or even something wild like a custom drag truck, the 572 is a turnkey solution for absurd power. It sounds like thunder, looks like a block of American muscle, and delivers earth-shaking torque from the moment you stab the throttle. You will not find this kind of engine in a factory-built car anymore. Emissions laws, fuel economy standards, and modern engineering have made dinosaurs like this extinct on the production line. But as a crate motor, the 572 lives on, unapologetically brutal and gloriously old school. But size is not everything. The next engine gets mad, not with displacement, but with shape. Oval pistons, to be exact. Honda VTwin with oval pistons. Back in the 1980s, when two-stroke motorcycles dominated Grand Prix racing, Honda made a promise to stick with four-stroke technology. The result? A V4 engine with oval pistons so bizarre, it became one of the most over-engineered power plants in motorcycle history, the NR750. On paper, it was a 747 cubic centimeter four-stroke V4, but each cylinder was stretched into an oval shape, allowing it to run 8 valves and 2 connecting rods per cylinder. The goal? To legally mimic the airflow of a V8 engine without breaking racing regulations. The engine revved to over 14,000 revolutions per minute and produced around 125 horsepower, depending on the setup. This was not just an experiment, it was a full-blown engineering statement. The NR750 featured titanium internals, carbon fiber bodywork, and electronic fuel injection back when most motorcycles were still carbureted. It even had active ram air intake ducts and digital dash displays, decades ahead of its time. Engineers obsessed over every detail, from the oval combustion chamber design to the camshaft timing geometry, treating the entire project like a mechanical moonshot. And the exhaust note? It was unlike anything else on the road. High-pitched, mechanical, and alien. Only a few hundred were ever made for the road, making this bike one of the rarest and most exotic Hondas ever built. But it was not about sales. It was about proving a point that Honda could do the impossible and make it sound beautiful. The NR750 wasn't built for everyone, it was built for the future, by people who refused to follow the past. Now imagine something even wilder, an engine that was never even meant to touch pavement. Let's talk about a gas turbine pulled straight from the sky. Boeing T50 Turboshaft, The Boeing T50 was never designed to power anything with wheels. Originally developed in the early 1950s as a lightweight turboshaft engine, it was meant for unmanned aerial vehicles, small helicopters, and guided missile platforms. In other words, this was a jet-age power plant born in the crucible of Cold War aerospace engineering. Compact, efficient, and capable of operating at extreme altitudes and speeds, it was a marvel of its time. But somewhere along the way, a few gearheads looked at it and thought, what if we put this in a go-kart? This miniature gas turbine weighed just over 200 pounds and produced close to 300 horsepower. That is a power-to-weight ratio normally found in superbikes or supercars, not something built for military drones. The engine used a single-shaft centrifugal compressor feeding an axial flow turbine and a fixed nozzle to control exhaust thrust. At full throttle, it could spin at over 60,000 revolutions per minute. The T50 had no traditional throttle response, minimal low-end torque, and zero forgiveness. But what it lacked in practicality, it more than made up for in chaos. Mounted in tiny custom frames, the engine turned go-karts and motorcycles into flame-spitting, deafening death machines. It whined like a fighter jet on takeoff and turned heads for miles. It was not just fast, it was absolutely unhinged. And while it never found its way into mass production, the Boeing T50 lives on in the world of backyard engineering, speed record attempts, and YouTube legends. It is proof that when you combine military tech with zero common sense, you get something truly unforgettable. But let's bring it back down to earth, barely, with an exotic V8 nobody talks about. Lamborghini 2.5-liter V8. When most people think of Lamborghini, they imagine screaming V12 engines, wide bodies, and outrageous Italian flair. But tucked in the brand's lesser-known past is a strange little V8 that defied the norm in every way. The 2.5-liter engine found in the Lamborghini Urraco and Silhouette. This was not a monster built for top speed or brute power. It was a compact, high-revving jewel designed to navigate Italy's infamous engine displacement taxes and appeal to a broader market. In the early 1970s, the Italian government imposed strict tax penalties on cars with engines over 2 liters. To keep sales viable, Lamborghini developed a family of small V8 engines with displacements of 2.0, 2.5, and 3.0 liters. The 2.5-liter variant, in particular, struck a balance between performance and tax efficiency. This engine was a 90-degree V8 with double overhead camshafts and 2 valves per cylinder. It produced roughly 180 horsepower and 133 pound-feet of torque. Not exactly supercar numbers, but more than enough for the Urraco's lightweight chassis. It used Weber carburetors for fuel delivery, had a compression ratio of around 10.5 to 1, and revved with a distinctly exotic sound. Despite its small size, the engine delivered that unmistakable Lamborghini growl and paired beautifully with a 5-speed manual transmission. It gave drivers the feeling of an exotic ride without the taxman knocking on the door. However, the engine's complexity and relative lack of torque meant it was not easy to maintain, and the cars it powered remain niche collector pieces today. Now let's get into something that's technically an 8-cylinder. Built by an airplane company. Pratt & Whitney 8-cylinder Radial. In the world of aviation, few names are more iconic than Pratt & Whitney, but while the company is best known for its large commercial and military jet engines, it once built a series of wild radial piston engines that bordered on madness. Among the most intriguing of these is the rarely discussed 8-cylinder Radial, an air-cooled, torque-heavy monster that never made it into the mainstream spotlight. Radial engines differ from inline or V-type engines in that the cylinders are arranged in a circle around the crankshaft, like the spokes of a wheel. This design allowed for superior air cooling, incredible low-end torque, and compact packaging for aircraft noses. The Pratt & Whitney 8-cylinder Radial, likely a derivative of the legendary Wasp Jr. or an experimental build, delivered an estimated 350 horsepower at around 2,200 revolutions per minute. That might not sound extreme today, but in the early 20th century, it was raw power for the skies. With each cylinder displacing over 800 cubic centimeters, the total engine capacity landed in the neighborhood of 6.5 liters. The engine ran on high-octane aviation gasoline and was designed for endurance, not efficiency. It had a throaty rumble, a mechanical clatter, and an unmistakable presence in the air, or wherever else it happened to end up. That's right, this engine didn't always stay airborne. Over the years, gearheads have transplanted radial engines like this into hot rods, motorcycles, and even boats. The result? Glorious ground-shaking lunacy. Imagine 8 pistons firing in a circular pattern, pushing out pure torque and drowning out anything nearby. But if you want a true Frankenstein of an engine, how about 12 pistons and just 6 cylinders? TVR 7.7 liter V12. TVR has always been a brand fueled by insanity. Based in Blackpool, England, and known for cars that prioritize drama over reliability, the company's most outrageous engine project was the elusive 7.7 liter V12. It was never mass-produced, never offered in a finished TVR model, and yet it remains one of the boldest engine concepts the company ever attempted. Developed during TVR's short-lived Russian ownership under Nikolai Smolensky in the early 2010s, the engine was envisioned as a homegrown British alternative to the V12s found in Ferrari and Aston Martin flagships. At full displacement, the naturally aspirated 12-cylinder engine pushed out an estimated 700 horsepower and close to 650 pound-feet of torque, with a redline rumored to exceed 7,500 revolutions per minute. Constructed from lightweight aluminum alloy, the massive power plant was designed with an ultra-wide V-angle for improved cooling and weight distribution. Fuel delivery was handled by a direct injection system mated to individual throttle bodies, while the exhaust layout featured a bespoke 12-into-1 configuration for maximum howl. The resulting sound: think thunderstorm mixed with chainsaw, a mechanical war cry on wheels. The engine was paired with a rear-mounted transaxle to balance the car's weight, and early dyno tests suggested performance figures that could rival the Ferrari Enzo. Sadly, the 7.7 V12 never made it beyond prototype status. TVR's financial troubles and shifting leadership sealed its fate. Still, for a brief moment in time, TVR stared down the giants and said, "Let's build something louder." It was a symphony of chaos that almost was. Our last engine takes all logic and throws it in the shredder. Twin crankshafts, double cylinders, and diesel insanity. Napier Deltic. There are mad engines. And then there's the Napier Deltic. This isn't just a power plant, it's a mechanical fever dream that somehow made it into production. Built by D. Napier and Son in the United Kingdom during the early 1950s, the Deltic engine was originally developed for fast naval vessels and later adapted for railway locomotives. But what really makes it insane is its configuration. The Deltic was shaped like a triangle, literally. It used 3 crankshafts arranged in a delta pattern with 18 cylinders and a jaw-dropping total of 36 pistons. It was an opposed piston, 2-stroke diesel engine, meaning that each cylinder had 2 pistons moving toward each other without any cylinder head. The explosion occurred in the middle, and the power was distributed to multiple crankshafts. This design removed the need for valves, reduced weight, and dramatically increased power density. So how much power are we talking about? Depending on the model, the Deltic could produce between 1,700 horsepower and 2,500 horsepower. D1825 had a displacement of 88.2 liters. That's not an engine, that's a ship reactor with a bad attitude. This monster powered British Type 45 naval boats and the famous British Rail Class 55 diesel locomotives. The sound? Unmistakable. High-pitched, mechanical, and strangely musical. Maintenance, however, was a nightmare. With 3 crankshafts and a complex supercharging system, the Deltic was both a triumph of engineering and a mechanic's worst enemy. In the end, the Napier Deltic wasn't just mad, it was revolutionary. A triangle of torque, a diesel dream, and an engine so complex it should never have worked. So now you've seen the wildest, loudest, most Which engine blew your mind the most? Drop it in the comments. And if this ride was worth it, hit subscribe. We've got more unhinged machines on the way. And trust us, it only gets crazier from here.